On March 7, 1876, a 29-year-old speech teacher walked into a courtroom-style patent hearing in Washington, D.C., and by the end of that year, he'd be the most famous inventor in America. Here's the part they leave out of the textbooks. He almost lost. Another man filed for basically the same invention on the exact same day. Some historians think just hours apart, maybe less. There are still arguments today about who actually got there first, and whether Bell's lawyers played dirty to make sure he won. And the strangest part of all, Alexander Graham Bell wasn't even trying to invent the telephone. He didn't care about talking to people far away. What he actually wanted, what he spent his whole life obsessed with, was making sound visible to people who couldn't hear it at all. This is the real story. Not the guy on the dollar store poster holding a phone. The guy whose mother was deaf, whose wife was deaf, and who built one of the most famous machines in human history almost by accident, while trying to do something else entirely. Bell was born in Edinburgh in 1847, into a family that was, frankly, a little obsessed with the human voice. His grandfather trained actors how to speak. His father invented an entire written system called visible speech, symbols that showed exactly how to move your mouth to make any sound in any language. But the detail that actually shaped Bell's life was quieter than that. His mother, Elisha, was going deaf. Not born deaf, losing her hearing gradually, starting in her 30s. And young Alexander figured out something clever to talk to her. He'd speak low and close to her forehead, and she could feel the vibrations well enough to understand him. Think about that for a second. Before he ever touched a wire or a battery, Bell's first invention was a workaround for his own mother's silence. That instinct never left him. As a teenager, he taught his dog to growl in a way that almost sounded like words, just to prove sound could be manipulated. His friends thought it was funny. Bell thought it was proof of concept. By his early 20s, tragedy hit hard. Both of his brothers died of tuberculosis. His parents, terrified of losing their last son too, moved the family to Canada for cleaner air. Bell was 23, grieving, and suddenly an ocean away from everything he knew. He needed work, and the work that found him would change everything. Bell became a teacher of the deaf. Not a hobby, not a side project, his actual profession, the thing he was known for before anyone cared about his inventions. He moved to Boston and started teaching at a school for deaf children, using his father's visible speech system. And he was good at it, genuinely gifted. Deaf children who'd been told they'd never speak were learning to form words under his instruction. One of his students was a bright, sharp 15-year-old girl named Mabel Hubbard, deaf since childhood after a bout of scarlet fever. Bell was 10 years older, her teacher, and this part matters. He fell for her long before she ever felt the same way back. He courted her for years. Slowly, patiently. She initially saw him as nothing more than her instructor. But eventually, that changed, and in 1877 they married. By all accounts, it was a genuine, warm partnership. Mabel wasn't some footnote in his story. She was sharp, socially fearless, and later became one of the people who pushed him hardest to actually finish his projects instead of endlessly tinkering. Here's the thing worth sitting with. The man who invented the telephone spent his entire adult life surrounded by people who couldn't hear a single word out of it. While teaching, Bell kept experimenting on the side with something called the harmonic telegraph, a way to send multiple telegraph messages down one wire at the same time using different pitches. That was the actual goal. Multiple messages, one wire. Boring, practical, profitable. The telephone wasn't the plan. It was a byproduct. Working with his assistant, a young electrician named Thomas Watson, Bell kept noticing something strange. The wires seemed to carry more than just clicks and tones. It seemed to carry the actual texture of sound, the vibration of a voice. Most people would have filed that away as a technical curiosity and gone back to the actual assignment. Bell didn't. He chased it. On March 10, 1876, just 3 days after that contested patent hearing, Bell reportedly spilled some battery acid on himself in his lab and said, urgently, into his experimental transmitter, "Mr. Watson, come here, I want to see you." And in the next room, Watson heard him. Not through a door, through the wire. That's it. That's the moment. Not a eureka scream, not a parade. A man who just burned himself, calling for help, and accidentally making history while doing it. Now, back to that patent controversy, because it's the part that makes this story actually interesting instead of just inspirational. An inventor named Elisha Gray was working on almost the exact same idea. Gray filed a caveat, basically a notice of intent to patent, for a similar sound transmission device on the very same day Bell's lawyer filed his full patent application. Some accounts say Bell's paperwork was physically stamped just a couple of hours earlier. Others argue Gray's caveat actually described the more workable design, and that Bell's own patent examiner may have shown Bell details from Gray's filing before Bell finalized his version. Nothing was ever proven in court. Bell won every legal challenge that came after, and there were dozens of them, for years. But historians still debate it, because the paper trail is messy and convenient in ways that raise eyebrows. What's not in dispute is this. Bell built a working demonstration faster than anyone else, and he knew how to sell it. At the 1876 Centennial Exhibition in Philadelphia, he got the chance to demonstrate his invention in front of judges, including the Emperor of Brazil, who reportedly said, "My God, it talks." That single demonstration is arguably what saved the telephone from becoming a forgotten patent in a drawer. Here's what most people don't know. Bell kind of hated running a telephone company. Once the Bell Telephone Company took off, he found the business side tedious and handed most of it off, going back to what actually interested him, and it wasn't telephones. He worked on hydrofoil boats that set water speed records. He worked on early flying machines with a research group he funded himself. He invented a device using light instead of wire to transmit sound, called the photophone, which he considered his greatest invention, greater than the telephone, even though almost nobody remembers it today. He also poured money and time into deaf education for the rest of his life, and into a magazine you've definitely heard of. He was a founding financial backer and later president of the National Geographic Society. Bell died in 1922 at his home in Nova Scotia. And on the day of his funeral, every telephone in the United States and Canada, every single one, went silent for 1 minute, as a tribute to the man who accidentally built them. So here's what to actually take from Alexander Graham Bell's story. Not believe in yourself. Not never give up. The actual, specific lesson. He didn't set out to connect the whole world. He set out to help one deaf mother understand her son and one deaf student learn to speak.